The air in the lobby is thick with the scent of salt and hibiscus, a fragrance that once meant home, meant happiness. Now, it just smells like the end of the world. My world, anyway. I watch the ceiling fan turn, a slow, lazy spiral, each rotation marking a second of my life I'll never get back. My knuckles are white where I'm gripping the wicker arm of the chair. From my shaded corner, I have a perfect view of the entrance, the grand, open-air archway that frames the turquoise ocean like a postcard. A postcard from a life that is about to be ripped to shreds. A pristine white taxi pulls up the winding drive. My heart doesn't hammer in my chest. It does something worse. It goes completely still, a cold, dead weight behind my ribs. The door opens and he gets out.
Mark.
My husband. He looks exactly as I remember him from 2 days ago, when he kissed my forehead and told me he'd miss me on his business trip. He's wearing a linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing the watch I bought him for our 10th anniversary. He looks relaxed, confident. He turns and offers his hand to his passenger. She emerges like a starlet, all long legs and blonde hair, sunglasses perched on her head.
Chloe.
Of course, it's Chloe. Younger, brighter, a newer model. She looks around the lobby of the Serenity Cove, her mouth forming a perfect O of admiration. Mark's chest puffs out. I can see it from here. The pride, the smug satisfaction of a man presenting a stolen jewel. He thinks he's bringing his new prize to the site of his old conquest. He has no idea he's walking into his own execution. They approach the check-in desk hand in hand. The air in the building seems to hold its breath. Javier, the general manager, a man with kind eyes who has known me for a decade, steps forward. He intercepts them before they reach the desk. He gives Mark a polite, professional nod. Mr. Smith, welcome. Mark beams, a proprietor's smile. Javier, good to see you. It's been too long. Then, Javier's eyes scan the lobby, find me, and his entire demeanor changes. A huge, genuine smile breaks across his face, a warmth that reaches his eyes. He ignores Chloe completely. He raises his voice, just enough for it to carry across the polished stone floor. Mrs. Smith, welcome back. It is so wonderful to have you with us again. Time stops. Mark freezes, his hand still holding Chloe's. His smile falters, then collapses. Chloe looks from Javier to Mark, her brow furrowed in confusion. Smith. I hear her whisper. I thought you said your name was Turner. Mark's head snaps around. His eyes dart around the lobby, wide with a dawning, animal panic. And then he sees me, sitting in the corner, watching. The color drains from his face, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. The tan he spent a week cultivating at a resort across town with her is gone, erased by pure, unadulterated shock. He lets go of Chloe's hand as if it's on fire. Amelia, he chokes out. It's not a question. It's the sound of a man seeing a ghost. Javier continues, his voice smooth as silk, a perfect performance. Your suite is ready, of course. The owner's villa. We've already stocked the bar with your favorite gin and had the chef prepare those coconut macaroons you love. Every word is a hammer blow. I can see them landing on Mark's consciousness. Owner's villa. He knows that villa. It's the one we peeked at on our honeymoon, the secluded palace on the cliff's edge that was always reserved for the resort's mysterious, unseen owner. I stand up slowly, letting the moment stretch. I walk towards them, my bare feet silent on the cool floor. I stop a few feet from my husband. His mouth is opening and closing, but no sound is coming out. I own it, Mark, I say, my voice quiet, but it cuts through the lobby's silence, like a shard of glass. I own the whole resort, and that's when he collapses. His legs just give way. He crumples to the floor in a heap of expensive linen and shattered lies, gasping for air like a landed fish. If you've ever felt the ground shift beneath someone else's feet instead of your own, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe. It means more to me than you can possibly imagine. 10 years. A decade is a long time. It's long enough to build a life, a home, a history. It's long enough to learn the cadence of someone's breathing in the dark, the specific way they sigh when they're tired, the shape of their hand in yours. It's long enough to believe that you know a person down to their very soul. And it's long enough for that soul to be a complete and utter stranger. Our life, from the outside, was perfect. Mark was a partner at a prestigious finance firm, a shark in a tailored suit. I was a freelance graphic designer, a job that gave me the flexibility to manage our home, our social life, the intricate machinery of his success. We had the beautiful house in the suburbs, the 2 luxury cars in the driveway, the annual trips to exotic locales. We were the couple other couples envied. We were a lie. The first cracks were so small, I could ignore them. A late night at the office that smelled faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. A hushed phone call in the other room that ended the second I walked in. He'd hold up his phone with a dismissive wave. Just work, honey. You know how it is, and I did. Or I thought I did. I knew his work was demanding, his hours grueling. I was his support system, his soft place to land. So I'd make his plate of dinner, cover it, and leave it in the warming drawer. I'd go to bed alone, the space beside me cold, and tell myself this was the price of the life he was building for us. He started talking about a new hire at the office. Chloe. A real go-getter, he'd said, a strange glint in his eye. Sharp as a tack. Reminds me of me. 20 years ago, he laughed, but the sound was hollow. He talked about her a lot. Chloe's brilliant idea in the Monday meeting. Chloe's killer presentation that landed the big client. Chloe, Chloe, Chloe. Her name became a ghost in our house, a third presence at our dinner table. I told myself I was being jealous, petty. I was a confident, modern woman. I wasn't the type to be threatened by a younger colleague. But the distance between us grew, a silent, yawning chasm. Touches became fleeting, then non-existent. Conversations were transactional, checklists of household chores and social obligations. The man I married, the one who would pull me into the kitchen to dance to an old song on the radio, the one who left little notes for me in my coat pocket, was gone. In his place was a polite, distant roommate who paid the bills. I lived for the memories, playing them over and over in my head like an old movie. The best one, the one I always returned to, was our honeymoon. We were young, broke, and so desperately in love. We'd splurged everything we had on a week at a tiny, then unknown boutique resort called the Serenity Cove. It was heaven, a handful of bungalows nestled in a lush, tropical jungle, overlooking a private, pristine beach. We spent our days swimming in the impossibly blue water and our nights talking for hours on the porch of our little cabin, sharing dreams under a blanket of stars. Mark was different then. Softer. He wasn't a shark yet. He was just a man in love with his wife. He'd trace the lines on my palm and tell me they all led back to him. I believed him. That resort, that memory, was the cornerstone of our marriage, the sacred ground I thought we could always return to. My grandfather was a quiet, shrewd man who smelled of old books and peppermint. He'd made a fortune in quiet, shrewd ways, never flashy, always strategic. He adored me. When he passed away 2 years ago, he left me a substantial inheritance. Mark knew about it, of course. He saw the initial numbers, and his eyes lit up with possibilities, a boat, a bigger house, an expansion on our portfolio. But I, respecting my grandfather's quiet nature, put most of it into a blind trust, managed by my grandfather's ancient lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. I told Mark it was tied up in complicated ways, that we'd get a comfortable dividend each year, but the principal was untouchable for now. He was annoyed, but he accepted it. What he didn't know, what I barely knew myself, was that a portion of the inheritance wasn't liquid at all. It was a portfolio of private equity small businesses my grandfather had believed in. It was just a folder of paperwork Mr. Abernathy had given me, full of jargon I didn't understand. I glanced at it once, filed it away, and forgot about it. My life was busy, and my heart was starting to break. I had bigger things to worry about than my grandfather's dusty old investments. The end of my denial came on a Tuesday. It was our anniversary. 11 years. I'd planned a special dinner, cooked his favorite meal, bought a bottle of wine that cost more than our first couch. He was late. Not just a little late. Hours late. He stumbled in just before midnight, his tie askew, reeking of expensive whiskey and that perfume. The one that wasn't mine. "Sorry, honey," he slurred, fumbling with his keys. "Celebratory drinks with the team." We landed the Henderson account. He didn't even notice the candles, the carefully set table, the meal I had long since cleared away. He just collapsed onto the bed and was snoring in minutes. I stood in the doorway, watching him, and the cold, hard truth finally settled in my bones. It was a physical sensation, like swallowing ice. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being a fool. His phone was on the nightstand, charging. I had never, in 11 years, looked through his phone. It felt like a violation of a sacred trust. But as I stood there, I realized trust had left this house a long time ago. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type in the passcode. Our old anniversary date. A bitter irony. It worked. He hadn't even bothered to change it. And there it was. A thread of messages with a contact saved as C. The screen lit up with a string of them from that evening. C. Tonight was amazing. I can't believe you. Mark. Best anniversary ever. Wish I was still there with you instead of heading home to the Ice Queen. C. Soon. You promised. Mark, soon. I'm working on it. Just have to handle a few things first. She has no idea. She has no idea. The words burned themselves onto my retina. Ice Queen. That's what I was to him. A thing to be handled. I scrolled up. Weeks, months of messages. Intimate, loving, filthy messages. Pictures. Hotel reservations. A life. A whole other life he was living behind my back. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I sank down onto the carpet, the phone clutched in my hand, a silent scream trapped in my throat. The man sleeping in my bed, the man whose hand I had held through sickness and setbacks and celebrations, was a complete stranger. And he was meticulously destroying me. I didn't confront him that night. Or the next day. The rage and the grief were a storm inside me, so powerful I was afraid if I opened my mouth, only poison would come out. I needed a plan. Crying and screaming would get me nothing but a condescending pat on the head and more lies. He'd call me hysterical. He'd twist it until I was the one apologizing. I'd seen him do it to his opponents in business 100 times. No. I would not give him that satisfaction. So I became a ghost in my own home. I was quiet, observant. I went through the motions of our life, a perfect automaton of a wife. I made his coffee in the morning, asked about his day in the evening, and smiled pleasantly while my heart was turning to stone. Inside, I was a detective. I was a soldier gathering intelligence before a war. The first few weeks were a clumsy, heartbreaking education in betrayal. I learned to use the Find My Device feature to track his movements, my stomach twisting into knots every time his phone's location pinged at a downtown hotel during his late-night meetings. I found the secret credit card statement hidden in his gym bag, a long list of expenditures that painted a vivid picture of his affair. Jewelry from Tiffany's, a necklace I recognized from a photo Chloe had posted on her social media, captioned, "Best boss ever." Dinners at restaurants he'd told me were impossible to get into. Weekend trips to Napa he'd claimed were solo corporate retreats. Every discovery was a fresh stab wound. The sheer arrogance of it all was breathtaking. He wasn't just cheating, he was flaunting it, using our money, our life, as the backdrop for his tawdry romance. The pain was so immense, some days I could barely breathe. I'd lock myself in the bathroom and sob until I was empty, then splash cold water on my face, fix my makeup, and walk back out into the living room with a serene smile. The performance was exhausting. I hired a divorce lawyer, a woman named Sharon who had eyes like a hawk and a reputation for being a shark herself. We met in secret at a coffee shop in a town 30 miles away. I laid out the printouts of the credit card statements, the screenshots of the texts, the location data. She looked it all over, her expression grim. "It's a solid case for infidelity," she said, her voice crisp. "But Mark is a powerful man, Amelia. His firm has a pack of legal pit bulls. He'll drag this out. He'll try to hide assets, claim you're unstable. He'll make your life a living hell to try and get you to settle for less than you deserve. The thought of a long, ugly public battle made me feel sick. The idea of him slandering me, painting me as the crazy, jealous wife, was terrifying. He was so good at manipulating people, at crafting narratives. I would be just another casualty. What do? I whispered, feeling the last of my strength drain away. Sharon leaned forward, her gaze intense. You keep gathering information. Quietly. We need irrefutable leverage. Something he can't spin. Something that hits him where he lives, his pride, his reputation, his wallet. All three if possible. Don't let him know you're onto him. Wait for him to make a big mistake. Men like this, they always get arrogant. They always slip up. So I waited. I played the part of the dutiful, slightly boring wife he was growing tired of. I listened to him complain about work. I nodded when he said he was feeling burnout, that he needed a break. And then one evening he made his move. He came home early, which was unusual. He brought me flowers, pale, listless roses from the supermarket. A guilt offering. He sat me down on the sofa, holding my hand with a fraudulent sincerity that made my skin crawl. Amelia, he began, his voice laced with that smooth, persuasive tone he used when closing a deal. I've been thinking. I'm under a lot of stress. I need to get away for a bit.
Just a week.
To recharge. I kept my expression neutral. Okay. Where were you thinking of going? He hesitated, a flicker of something, guilt? Excitement. In his eyes. I was thinking maybe that little place we went for our honeymoon. What was it called? Serenity Bay? Serenity Cove? It was so peaceful there. I think it would be good for me to go back, clear my head. Remember what's important. The audacity of it was like a physical blow. He was going to take her to our place. He was going to defile the one pure memory I had left, and he was using my own nostalgia as his cover story. The rage that filled me was so pure, so cold. It burned away every last tear. This was it. This was the mistake Sharon had told me to wait for. This wasn't just a slip-up. This was a declaration of war. I forced a small, sad smile. The Serenity Cove, I said softly. I remember. That sounds like a good idea, Mark.
You do seem stressed.
You should go. His relief was palpable. He squeezed my hand, his face a mask of patronizing concern. Thanks for understanding, honey. I knew you would. You're the best. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the dark house, the flowers he'd brought me mocking me from their vase on the counter. The pain was still there, a deep, throbbing ache. But something new was there beside it. A hard, sharp core of anger that was beginning to feel a lot like strength.
He was going to take her to our place.
Fine. But he had no idea who he was dealing with anymore. The heartbroken woman was gone. A strategist was taking her place. I went into my office and pulled out the dusty folder Mr. Abernathy had given me. The one with my grandfather's private equity investments. I'd ignored it for 2 years, too consumed by my life with Mark. Now I opened it under the glow of my desk lamp, my hands moving with a strange new purpose. I spread the documents out. Most of them were meaningless to me, stakeholder reports for tech startups, ownership certificates for commercial real estate ventures. But then I saw it. A thick sheaf of papers bound in a dark blue cover. The title on the front read, The Serenity Hospitality Group, LLC. Majority Shareholder Agreement. My breath caught. I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. The Serenity Hospitality Group. It was a small, boutique investment firm specializing in distressed luxury properties. And, according to the appendix, their flagship property, the first one they ever acquired and refurbished, was a resort. A beautiful little place in the Caribbean called the Serenity Cove. I kept reading, my heart pounding against my ribs. My grandfather hadn't just invested. He had bought the place outright when it was on the verge of bankruptcy years ago, seeing its potential. He'd formed the LLC, installed a management team, and held on to it. And according to the final page, the shareholder agreement, upon his death, his 85% majority stake, his controlling interest, had been transferred in its entirety to his sole beneficiary.
Me.
I stared at the paper, at my name printed in neat, black ink. Amelia Rose Smith, majority owner. It couldn't be real. It was too perfect, too poetic. A crazy coincidence from a movie plot. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. All this time, I had been mourning the loss of a memory, a sacred place that he was about to desecrate. All this time it had been mine. The ground didn't just shift beneath my feet. The entire world tilted on its axis. The grief and the pain were still there, but they were joined by a new, electrifying sensation.
Power.
For the first time in a long time, I had power. He thought he was taking something from me. He was about to find out he was a guest in my house. A very, very unwelcome guest. The plan began to form in my mind, not born of rage, but of a cold, clear, and absolute certainty. The Ice Queen was about to live up to her name. The days leading up to Mark's trip were the longest of my life. I was living a double life, and the strain was immense. On the surface, I was the supportive, slightly melancholy wife, helping him pack, reminding him to take his sunscreen. I'd watch him fold his linen shirts and new swim trunks, my stomach churning, knowing they were for her. I'd smile and nod as he talked about how much he needed this solo time. The lie so smooth on his tongue, he probably believed it himself. "It'll be good for us," he said one night, as I was making dinner. "I'll come back refreshed. We can reconnect." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the pan of sizzling garlic at his head. Instead, I just stirred the pasta sauce and said, "That sounds nice, dear." Every word was a performance. Every smile was a lie. I felt like an actress in a terrible play, and I was counting down the minutes until the final act. Beneath the surface, I was a general planning a complex military operation. My first call was to Mr. Abernathy, my grandfather's lawyer. His voice was a dry rustle of old paper over the phone. "Mr. Abernathy, it's Amelia Smith. I have some questions about my grandfather's portfolio, specifically the Serenity Hospitality Group." There was a pause. Yes," he said, a note of pleasant surprise in his voice. "I was wondering when you might take an interest. Your grandfather was very proud of that acquisition. He called it his little patch of paradise." I spent an hour on the phone with him, confirming everything. My ownership was ironclad. The management team at the resort reported to a board, and as the majority shareholder, I effectively was the board. They had been sending quarterly reports to Mr. Abernathy's office for years, which he had been dutifully filing away for me. I was the queen of a kingdom I never knew I had. "Is there anything in particular you need, Amelia?" he asked before we hung up. "Just one thing," I said, my voice steady. "I need the direct line for the general manager of the Serenity Cove, a man named Javier." My second call was harder. My hand hovered over the phone for a full 10 minutes before I could bring myself to dial the international number. What if he didn't believe me? What if he was loyal to Mark? What if this whole plan blew up in my face? I took a deep breath and pressed the button. A warm, professional voice answered. "The Serenity Cove, Javier speaking." "Javier," I began, my heart thumping. "My name is Amelia Smith. I believe you may remember me. My husband, Mark, and I spent our honeymoon with you about 10 years ago." There was a moment of silence, and then recognition. "Mrs. Smith. Of course, I remember. The young couple who danced on the beach during the storm. How wonderful to hear from you. How are you and Mr. Smith?" His genuine warmth almost broke me. "We're well. That's actually why I'm calling." I took another breath. "Javier, this is going to sound very strange. I'm the majority owner of the resort." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could hear the faint sound of waves crashing in the background. I imagined him standing in that beautiful lobby, looking out at the ocean, trying to process what I'd just said. "Mrs. Smith, Amelia, I'm not sure I understand. My grandfather was Arthur Wembley," I explained. "He acquired the property 11 years ago. The ownership passed to me when he died." I heard a sharp intake of breath. "Mr. Wembley. Of course. We were told his estate was being managed by his lawyers. I had no idea. This is quite a surprise. I know. And I have a very unusual favor to ask of you. I laid it all out. The affair. Mark's plan to bring his mistress to our resort. My plan to be there waiting for him. I didn't embellish or get emotional. I stated the facts calmly, clinically. When I finished, the line was quiet again. I held my breath, waiting for his judgment. He could refuse. He could call Mark and warn him. He could tell me he wouldn't get involved in a domestic dispute. Instead, he said, his voice low and firm, he is bringing that woman to your home, to the place you two began. That is an insult I will not tolerate. The owner's villa is yours, Amelia. It has always been waiting for you. Tell me what you need. My staff and I are at your service. The wave of relief was so powerful my knees went weak. I sank into a chair, tears finally streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of gratitude. I wasn't alone in this. The final days were a blur of secret preparations. I booked my own flight, one that would arrive a full day before Mark and Chloe's. I packed a suitcase, not with the clothes of Amelia Smith, the suburban wife, but with the wardrobe of the woman I wanted to become. Strong, elegant, untouchable. I transferred a significant sum of money into a new bank account in my name only. I had my lawyer, Sharon, draw up the divorce papers, ready to be served. The hardest part was the final goodbye. He stood at the door, his suitcase at his feet, beaming with anticipation. He pulled me into a hug, his arms feeling alien around me. I'll miss you, he said, his lips brushing my hair. The lie was so effortless. I'll miss you, too, I replied, my voice a perfect imitation of a loving wife. I held his gaze, searching for any flicker of the man I married. There was nothing, just a handsome stranger on his way to betray me. I watched him get into the taxi and drive away. The moment the car turned the corner, the facade I had been holding up for weeks finally crumbled. I leaned against the doorframe, my body shaking with a toxic cocktail of fear, rage, and a strange, terrifying exhilaration. The board was set. The pieces were in motion. There was no turning back now. My flight to the island was like a passage to another life. As the plane descended through the clouds, revealing the turquoise water and emerald green hills, I felt like I was shedding my old skin. The woman who got on the plane in a cold, gray city was not the same one who would step off into the warm, tropical air. Javier was waiting for me just outside customs. He greeted me with a respectful bow of his head and a warm, compassionate smile. There was no pity in his eyes, only solidarity. Welcome home, Mrs. Smith, he said, taking my bag. Please, Javier, I said, finding my voice. Call me Amelia. The owner's villa was more beautiful than I could have imagined. It wasn't a suite, it was a private home, perched on the cliffs with a panoramic view of the ocean. It had its own infinity pool, a sprawling veranda, and rooms filled with art and handcrafted furniture. It was elegant, serene, and powerful. It was mine. I spent the next 24 hours in a strange limbo. I walked the property, reacquainting myself with the place I had only known as a young, love-struck tourist. But now I saw it through a different lens. I saw the staff who worked tirelessly, the intricate details of the landscaping, the quiet, efficient hum of a well-run machine. I met with the head chef to discuss menu changes. I spoke with the head of housekeeping about sourcing linens from local artisans. I wasn't just a guest. I was the owner. And I found, to my own surprise, that I liked it. But underneath it all, a knot of dread was tightening in my stomach. The next day, he would arrive. The confrontation I had been planning for weeks was now just hours away. I stood on the veranda that night, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and pink. The beauty of it was almost painful. This was the same sunset he and I had watched together 10 years ago, wrapped in each other's arms. He was coming here to watch it with her. I thought I would be consumed by rage, but instead, I just felt a profound, aching sadness. Sadness for the girl I had been, so full of hope and trust. Sadness for the love I had believed in so completely. A single tear traced a path down my cheek. I let it fall. It was a goodbye. A final mourning for the life that was already gone. When the sun rose tomorrow, I would not be a victim. I would be the architect of my own future. I went inside, showered, and chose my armor for the battle to come. A simple, elegant white dress. The color of new beginnings. And the color of ice. The next afternoon, I took my position. I chose a secluded table in the shaded part of the lobby, a place where I could see the entrance clearly but would not be immediately noticed. I ordered a gin and tonic, the glass sweating in the humid air. I held the cold glass, letting it steady my trembling hands. Every nerve in my body was on fire. This was it. And then I saw the taxi. My carefully constructed composure threatened to crack. I took a slow, deep breath, just as Javier and I had rehearsed. I was not the wronged wife. I was the owner of this establishment, here to greet a guest. A guest who had severely overstayed his welcome in my life. I watched him lead her to the desk. I watched the smug pride on his face. And I watched Javier step forward, a paragon of professional grace. When he boomed my name across the lobby, the sound was like a starting gun. The race had begun. Mark's face was a canvas of collapsing emotions. First, confusion. Then disbelief. Then pure, primal fear. It was the look of a man who had built his entire world on a foundation of lies, only to watch it turn to sand and blow away in an instant. As I walked towards him, the noise in the lobby seemed to fade away. It was just the three of us, suspended in a bubble of time. Chloe was looking back and forth between us, her pretty face a mask of confusion. The cogs were turning in her head. The shared last name. The way the manager was fawning over me. My presence in this place that was supposed to be their secret getaway. Amelia, he finally managed to say, his voice a ragged whisper. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I replied, my voice calm and even. I looked past him, my eyes meeting Chloe's for the first time. I gave her a small, almost sympathetic smile. Hello. You must be Chloe. Mark has told me so much about you. That was a lie, of course. He'd never mentioned her name at home after those first few times. But it had the desired effect. Chloe's eyes widened. She took a half step back from Mark, as if he were suddenly contagious. Owner's villa? Mark stammered, his mind still stuck on Javier's words. What is he talking about? This was the moment. The culmination of weeks of pain, planning, and silent suffering. I looked him directly in the eye, letting him see the absolute absence of love, of pity, of anything but cold, hard finality. I own it, Mark. I own the whole resort. The statement hung in the air between us. And then he crumpled. It wasn't dramatic. There was no flailing. His body just seemed to lose its structural integrity. His knees buckled, and he went down, landing on the polished floor with a soft thud. He lay there, gasping, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a horror that was almost satisfying to watch. For a moment, nobody moved. The staff, who had been discreetly observing, froze in place. Chloe stared down at the man on the floor, her fairy tale romance dissolving before her very eyes. I, however, did not look at him. My focus was on her. I knelt down, not to hail my husband, but to speak to his mistress on her level. She flinched as I came closer. Let me guess, I said, my voice low and conspiratorial. He told you his name was Mark Turner, something generic and untraceable. Or maybe he used his real name and told you I was his sick, dying wife. Or maybe a crazy ex he couldn't shake. Was it a loveless marriage? Was he trapped? Was he just waiting for the right moment to leave me as soon as the big deal closed, or as soon as his mythical stock options vested? A tear slipped down Chloe's cheek. She nodded, unable to speak. She was just a child, I realized. A pawn in his pathetic little game. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. He told me, she finally whispered, her voice trembling, that you two were already separated. That the divorce was almost final. He said this trip was a celebration. The start of our new life. Our new life. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. I turned my attention from the girl to the mess on the floor. My husband. My pathetic, gasping husband. I looked at Javier, who was watching me, awaiting his instructions. Javier, I said, my voice ringing with an authority I didn't know I possessed. Please call a doctor for Mr. Smith. It appears he's unwell. I then glanced at Chloe, who was looking utterly lost. And for his guest, I continued, my tone dripping with magnanimous pity. Perhaps you can find her a room. The standard garden view at the back of the property should be sufficient. Don't worry about the bill, I added, delivering the final, crushing blow. Put it on my account. Javier nodded, a flicker of a smile on his lips. Of course, Amelia. Right away, he gestured, and 2 staff members moved forward, one speaking quietly into a walkie-talkie, the other approaching Chloe with a gentle, professional air as if he were dealing with a lost child. As they helped a dazed Chloe away, a man in a crisp suit I didn't recognize approached me. He carried a leather folio. Mrs. Smith, he asked. Yes. I'm from Sharon Stone's office. She asked me to deliver these to you. He opened the folio and handed me a thick manila envelope. The divorce papers. Sharon's timing was, as always, impeccable. I took the envelope and walked over to where 2 other staff members were now helping Mark into a sitting position. He was still pale, still breathing raggedly, but a flicker of his old arrogance was returning to his eyes as he looked at me. Amelia, you can't do this, he hissed, his voice weak, but laced with venom. This is insane. No, Mark, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. Insane is thinking you could bring your mistress to my resort and get away with it. I dropped the envelope into his lap. My lawyer will be in touch with yours, I said. I suggest you hire a very, very good one. I turned and walked away without a backward glance. I didn't watch as they helped him to his feet and escorted him towards the resort's small medical clinic. I didn't watch to see if Chloe was given her sad little room at the back of the property. I simply walked through the beautiful lobby, past the fountains and the flowers, and headed back to my villa on the cliff. The battle was over. The war for my life had just begun. The aftermath wasn't a victory parade. There was no champagne, no triumphant celebration. There was just a vast, echoing silence. I spent the next week in a self-imposed exile in the owner's villa, the most beautiful prison in the world. The initial adrenaline of the confrontation wore off, leaving behind a deep, resonant exhaustion. Mark was checked out by the resort doctor. A panic attack, they said, and put on the next flight back to the mainland. Javier handled it all with quiet efficiency. I never saw him again. Chloe, I was told, checked out the following morning, paying for her own taxi to the airport. Her room bill, for one night in the cheapest room on the property, was indeed charged to my account. I saw the line item on my weekly report and let out a dry, humorless laugh. My final, petty act of charity. My days fell into a strange rhythm. I would wake early, watch the sunrise from my veranda, and drink coffee, listening to the jungle wake up around me. Then I would work. Javier would bring me the daily reports, the financials, the staffing rosters. At first, it was a distraction, a way to keep my mind from replaying the scene in the lobby, from dwelling on the 11 years of my life that had turned out to be a lie. But then, something shifted. I started to see the resort not just as a weapon or a sanctuary, but as a business. A living, breathing entity. I found I had a knack for it. I had my grandfather's eye for detail, his instinct for numbers. I noticed inefficiencies in the supply chain, brainstormed ideas for new guest experiences, and drafted a marketing plan to attract a younger clientele. I was using a part of my brain that had lain dormant for a decade, a part that had been dedicated to managing Mark's life instead of my own. It was like finding a new limb I never knew I had. The calls with my lawyer, Sharon, were a sharp, painful intrusion from the world I had left behind. Mark was not going quietly. As predicted, his lawyers came out swinging. They accused me of emotional distress, of orchestrating a public humiliation. They tried to claim that the resort was a marital asset, that he was entitled to half. Let them try, I told Sharon, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. The ownership documents predate our marriage. The asset was never commingled. It was always mine. He just didn't know it. The battle raged on, thousands of miles away, a war of paperwork and legal threats. Mark, I learned through the grapevine, was unraveling. The story of his collapse at the resort had somehow leaked. Perhaps a disgruntled Chloe had shared her tale. His firm, deeply image-conscious, had asked him to take an indefinite leave of absence. His reputation as a cool, invincible shark was shattered. He was just another pathetic cheating husband. He tried to contact me, of course. First came the angry, threatening voicemails. Then, as his legal position weakened, they softened into desperate, pleading messages. He loved me. He'd made a terrible mistake. He would do anything to make it right. I listened to the first few, then I started deleting them without listening. The man on the phone was a stranger to me. His words were meaningless noise. One afternoon, I was walking along the beach, the same stretch of sand where he and I had danced in the rain as newlyweds. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It felt distant, like watching a scene from a movie about someone else's life. The girl in that memory was gone. I didn't mourn her anymore. I was grateful for the lessons she had learned the hard way. Javier found me there, standing at the water's edge. He held out a single, perfect hibiscus flower. I thought you should know, he said gently. The divorce was finalized this morning. Your lawyer sent word. He accepted the settlement. It's over. I took the flower, its petals soft as velvet against my fingers. Over. Such a small word for such a monumental shift. I had expected to feel a rush of relief, a victory. Instead, I just felt quiet. A deep, profound peace. Thank you, Javier, I said, tucking the flower behind my ear. For everything. He smiled. The staff are asking when the new owner will be making her changes. They are very excited. I looked out at the ocean, at the endless expanse of blue. I had come here to reclaim a memory, to execute a plan for revenge. But I had found something else entirely. A purpose. A home. Myself. Tell them, I said, a real smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Tell them the new owner is already here. And she's just getting started. The resort became my sanctuary, the place I was reborn. It's funny how the places that witness our deepest pain can also witness our greatest strength. The sunsets from the owner's villa are still breathtaking, but now I don't see them as an ending. I see them as a promise of a new day, a day that belongs completely and utterly to me. If this story found you when you needed it, let me know. And subscribing helps me bring more of these to life. Thank you for listening.